This is one scenario that I doubt I'll ever forget. Although I don't honestly remember every intricate detail, I think simply because it was way too much for my mind and my brain to comprehend what was actually going on. Um, this memory was perhaps the second or third week of having known Cecilia Steyn, and having just uh, done an audio recording now about Andrea. I thought I should mention this specific scenario because it also involves Andrea. But now, with only knowing Cecilia for 2 to 3 weeks, my mind still trying to adjust to these bizarre movie-like incidences and supposed attacks and things that you just cannot fathom are happening in front of your eyes, even though your physical eyes can see them. It's nothing I could ever accurately explain or describe unless you were actually there. It was and it is just simply too much for anybody to be able to comprehend or absorb that this is reality, even though it actually was not. But at that point in time, this or that was reality. That's how it was portrayed to me, and that's what the others in Cecilia's group believed as well. We were all living this fabricated scenario that, in all honesty, I think was too much for all of us to fully comprehend every tiny detail of it, even though we were trying. But now, in this specific memory, and with having mentioned Andrea in my previous recording, with Andrea supposedly having been killed or sacrificed in place of Cecilia on Halloween night, and also having mentioned that the occult had apparently kidnapped Andrea and basically held her hostage, daily tortured her until Halloween night. Now, this scenario happened perhaps just several days before Halloween. It was late at night, and Cecilia was on a mission to save Andrea, to save her friend from being killed. To be honest, even in relating this whole scenario that I personally lived through and watched, and then thinking about everything that I now know that's true and not true, my mind goes into a complete spiral, a spider web put into a blender, if you would like. It is meshed up and messed up. But I will just simply relate what happened, and all I can say is from my part, from my side in that scenario, it was the beginning stages, or one of the beginning stages of realizing that the supposed occult that was supposedly trying to kill Cecilia was supposedly real. This was supposedly reality because it was so realistic. Now, on this specific night, it was Cecilia, myself, Ria, and one of Ria's other team members from her ministry, who I won't mention, and then her Cecilia's son, little Andres, that was at home at Cecilia's flat. Now, obviously, little Andres could not go with in order to save Andrea, and someone had to watch him. So Cecilia asked me to stay behind in the flat to look after him while I waited for Cecilia, Ria, and this other woman to go out looking for Andrea, to go and rescue her. Cecilia had apparently found out where the occult was apparently holding her, and from what memory serves, and from what I was also told in the events that happened, it was at Coronation Dam. Coronation Dam for Cecilia we were always told it was a popular place for the people in the occult to hold rituals and do sacrifices. So the three of them left, Cecilia, Ria, and this other woman, and I waited, obviously wondering, questioning, worrying. I mean, three people, I'm basically, imagining three people running into a full occult group in the middle of a ritual, trying to save one woman. I did not see this going well at all. The worst ran through my mind. I was worried, and at the same time trying desperately to look after Cecilia's son, who kept asking where his mother was. But after, honestly, I don't know how long it was. It felt like hours. It could have been maybe just 1 or 2 hours, but it felt long. Cecilia, Ria, and this other woman finally arrived back at Cecilia's flat. And the odd thing, I must say, is when they walked through the door, Cecilia was so hyped up, excited, almost as if she had been to some adventure park and been on a sugar rush, having eaten too many sweets or candy and gone on too many thrill rides. That kind of rush, excitement, the thrill. It was weird. Ria and this other woman were very deafeningly quiet. They did not say a word. I honestly wouldn't even know how to begin to explain the looks on their faces. It was like a look of confusion, a look of worry, a look of concern. It was a mix of complete contrasting expressions to what Cecilia had. But as the three of them got back, Cecilia was the one that related the scenario, all hyped up, like I said. And she excitedly, and I mean excitedly, relates that the three of them searched up and down, driving up and down, trying to find where Andrea was being held, where the ritual was being held, and eventually they found the place. They apparently stormed into the middle of a ritual, and a fight broke out, a physical fight. Apparently there was punches that were thrown. I recall, I don't know if it was a baseball bat or a log or something that was used to try and hit someone. It was quite a vicious physical fight in order to try and rescue and save Andrea. And this is how the scenario is being portrayed the whole time, but only by Cecilia. She's relating the story detail for detail for detail. But she also adds a couple of times that it was so dark because it was late at night, and obviously a dam, especially all those years back, there was no lighting. So Cecilia quite often just repeated that it was so dark that you could barely see some of the people that were in front of you. You could barely notice if someone came up from behind you. So it was portrayed as a vicious physical fight where you could barely see who you were fighting. And this is how the scenario panned out, or apparently panned out. And thinking back now to how or when Cecilia was relating this whole scenario, looking at the response on Ria's face and this other woman's face while Cecilia was relating the story, they didn't say a word. It was almost as if they were confused, as if they didn't really know what was going on. I took their silence on the whole topic as them just being so overwhelmed, because for the first time they were in the middle of a physical, brutal fight, in the middle of a ritual trying to save someone. So they were pretty depleted and overwhelmed and beyond words. That was my honest initial thought. It was too much for their minds to handle, to grasp. It was just beyond them. Meantime, like I said, Cecilia was hyped up, excited about the whole scenario. To add, Andrea, however, was not rescued. In fact, I don't even recall Andrea even being found at this apparent ritual. But remember, like I said, it was too dark to see who was in front of you or coming up from behind you, according to Cecilia's words. But the mission was to go and rescue Andrea, but they did not rescue Andrea. But Andrea was not even mentioned, even being seen at this place where this apparent ritual was being held. But this is how the beginning stages of the realistic, or the supposed realistic scenarios or reality of Cecilia's apparent occult life, apparent occult threats, and so on, came. Bombarded isn't even the right word. The reality is way too much. I don't think even a movie could portray it well enough. It basically drowned you. It was just too much to grasp hold of every detail and still try and make sense of it. All I did was stand there and listen to Cecilia relate the story, and then she simply carried on with her usual things. Went to the kitchen, played on her phone, watched TV, nothing out of the ordinary, which I think would rather be strange if you had honestly been on a mission to save one of your closest friends from being, at the very least, tortured at a ritual after some kind of brutal physical fight. Two dramatic extremes. Hyped up from the whole scenario to as if none of it ever happened. To which I will obviously add, obviously it never happened. Yes, the three of them did drive out on the mission to find Andrea. Cecilia obviously knowing that this was nonsense. Ria and this other woman being completely fooled, that they were honestly believing they were going to try and find Andrea to rescue her. But as for the rest of the scenario, the apparent ritual that they pitched up in, the physical fight, and so on, if I take into account even if I just take away all the information that I know up until now, all the truth that I know up until now about Cecilia, about all the lies, if I take all of that away, if I'm still completely oblivious, and I just look at the simple expressions on Ria's face and this other woman's face, It was as if they didn't know what Cecilia was talking about. But, like I said, I didn't question because, to me, I thought they were just overwhelmed by the experience. But now, if I add in with all the information and truth that I do know up until now, I can understand why Ria and this other woman did not say a word, because you do not, or you dare not, contradict Cecilia. You do not, and you dare not correct her. It's just something that you should never do. And I think in that moment, obviously I stand to be corrected. I honestly think Ria and that woman were, obviously aside from being confused by the supposed scenario that had happened, I honestly don't think they knew what to say. They more than likely wanted to say, but none of this ever happened. They obviously wanted to say there was no one we fought. They obviously wanted to actually say the full truth. But again, looking at the expressions on their faces, the confusion, dumbfounded, confusion, speechless, and then taking into account everything I know up until now, I know why they didn't speak up and say that none of this ever happened. Because Cecilia would have, at the very least, and I can tell you this from plenty of experience, if Ria and this other woman had have said, but we didn't see a ritual, we didn't see anybody else, we didn't see a fight, Cecilia would have said to them that the occult would have done magic over you to put like a haze over your eyes so you could not see them, so they would be invisible to you, or they would have blanked out your memory. They would have done something, basically, in a nutshell, to make you not be able to see what was really going on. Therefore, making you out to look like or feel like a complete idiot, because this was not your world. This is not how you grew up. But this is how Cecilia grew up. This is what she was used to. And because she was supposedly this masterful witch with abilities and powers and so on, she could not have those kind of things done to her where they could put a haze over her eyes or they could suddenly disappear and so on. But to a normal, average person who did not grow up like this, it was very simple, apparently. I mean, I could relate countless times where I would be driving around Krugersdorp with Cecilia in the car next to me, and she would claim that her father or someone in the occult was following us. And immediately the response would always be to look to see where they are, because they were apparently, or most of the time should I say, in a car behind us or two cars behind us, and I would turn and look. And there were many times I would say to Cecilia, that doesn't look anything like your father. How do you know it's your father? And then her response would always be, oh no, he does magic to make himself look like someone else so that basically the world can be fooled, but she will still be able to recognize him. So basically, if this person that we do not recognize, who we do not see as a threat to hurt Cecilia, is there, we will not then try to protect her. Meantime, this person actually is there to hurt her, but we can't see it because our eyes and our minds and everything about that has this haze over it, some kind of magic spell that makes us see other things. This was one of her too often comments. It eventually got to the point where I would even just stop saying it doesn't look like your father. because it never looked like, I'd never once seen her father follow us in a car, and I'd met her father many times. Even when I met her father in person each time, I remember the first time I said to her, "Your father doesn't look any bit dangerous. He looks harmless." And she gave me the same old excuse. He does magic to make himself look one way, to make him look like he's this gentle, sweet man that can do no harm. Meantime, if you take away that haze or that magic spell, you will see this vicious, vile man, and you will be terrified. This the stories, the excuses, they were endless. And now that I've gone a bit off topic, just going back to originally talking about the night of trying to supposedly rescue Andrea, this was definitely an excuse that had been used by Cecilia too many times. Towards Ria, this other woman, I'd even heard it already within those 2-3 weeks. And again, like I said, added to those things, you also just do not dare question or correct Cecilia. I could say she knew how to break you properly within seconds. But then again, that was the very least of what she could do and did. Because, look at what she's been convicted of. And yet what is in the media is still absolutely nothing to the extent of everything that she's done. So when you come face to face alone with Cecilia, even if there's one or two other people there, even if her child is there, you don't say a word. Rather keep quiet. It's just safer. It's safer that way.